My name is Sergio, Sergio Fonta. I'm an international judge, and I'm currently the chairman of Archery Judges Committee. Today, I'd like to talk to you about judging in general and what we in our International Judges Committee have considered a good judge, the standards that we usually use to assess our judges and so on. So I hope you enjoy my presentation today, which is going to be part of the summit that Archery has organized on the topic of judging. So I like to talk about what makes a good judge in archery. But in order to do so, I think that we need to understand how the role of judges in archery has changed in the last, I'd say, 40 years. When I became an international judge candidate, and that was back in 1982, the competition format was quite different from the way it is now. At that time, we held world championships, Olympic games, regional games, and regional championships using the format of the single feature round or the double feature round. So that meant that the archers would shoot ends of 6 or 3 arrows, depending on the distance. They would go to the targets, they would score, and the judges were behind just watching. And in case an arrow needed to be called, it was also possible, and it was at that time possible to have up to 3 judges making a call on one single arrow. Of course, that would probably allow a judge to make a mistake and still the result would be good because 2 other judges will be able to overrule the decision made by this judge who probably did not do the right thing. Now, in the Olympic Games in Barcelona in 1992, the system changed to what we call now the Olympic round or match play. So there are different names for the same thing, but that is having a qualification round with elimination matches, with finals on television, with team round and everything else, which is different from the way it was. So as you can see on the screen, our tasks now involve more challenging, like say, jobs. In the first place, now we have the 3D events, which we didn't have at that time. Also, the para events, which became part of archery, I would say not more than 15 years ago. So at the time when I became a judge, we didn't have para events, and para events also have their special rules regarding a lot of things. Of course, field inspection and equipment inspection have somehow been the same in the last few years, but we have added the instinctive bow and the long bow to the 3D events, which is also a challenge. Now we now have a qualification round, which is similar to what we had with the FITA round. Now, well, we only have 1 distance now. At that time we had 4, but it's basically the same procedure. Now, what do we have that is new? The elimination round with matches for both individual and team events. We have the team round with the situation that it is sort of like a time event in which the teams have only 2 minutes to shoot 6 arrows, and they have a penalty in case an arrow is shot after that time. So there's yellow cards, there's red cards and all this. And important, and I would say one of the things that makes our job a little bit more stressful now is the finals, when we are exposed to television. So we have a line judge who is doing all these, like the show manager, sort of like that, on television, indicating who shoots first and second, indicating who's shooting now, and you know that the shooting can start, and so on. You can see the picture, you know, with the judge. It's the up left picture with the lady judge wearing the yellow shirt. She is in a team match. She's watching the line, the 1 meter line, to make sure that nobody crosses the line too early, so that she doesn't need to raise her yellow card. And we have the shoot-offs. The shoot-offs is something new. We started having it in 1988 at the Olympics in Seoul with a different system because they consisted in 3 arrows, not just 1, as we do have now. And one thing that has been incorporated in the last few years is the fact that we need to measure sometimes the distance between the center of the target and the arrow. So that's what you can see in the picture that we have at the bottom on the right. So this is sort of like a description, a very general and quick description of the evolution of rules and so on that, of course, judging has also been through. Now, the role of our job, of our judges now, though we have had changes in the rules, I would say that the major change has been exposure. That is, we are now seen on television. You know, when you watch finals of world championships or World Cups or the Olympic Games, and in the Olympic Games, it's not only the finals, it's all the matches and so on. You always see a judge doing, you know, his or her job, and that's very visible. So if many years ago, a possible mistake probably could not have been noticed because there was no television, now just a little minor mistake can be seen everywhere in the world, and that would sometimes, you know, give it the wrong image that all judges are bad and so on, which is not the case. I mean, for every little mistake that is made, we have, you know, hundreds, thousands of times in which our judges have done the right thing, and that's not visible, which is good. I mean, some people say that judging is good when nobody notices that there are judges on the field, and that's wonderful. So I like to refer a little bit to, and you know, when I talk about the evolution of judges, I like to refer to about our uniforms and how they have evolved from the times when I became a judge. You can see in the, I'm sure you're able to identify which is the oldest, or which picture is the oldest one. That's the one in the middle in the upper part. You see all the judges wearing suits and ties and so on. That was at the World Championships in Long Beach, California in 1983. But there are many other pictures in which you can see here how the World Archery judges' uniform has also changed. You see the olive green. This is a picture of the World Championships in 2013 in Belek, Turkey. You can also see almost, you know, white, which is light gray uniform of the judges at the World Championships in 2009 in Ulsan, Korea. Then we have a picture of, with the judges wearing green uniforms at the World Cup in Salt Lake City in 2017 in the United States. And the picture in the middle, the bottom middle, with the judges wearing this red shirt is of our latest World Championships in the Netherlands in 2019. Our uniform has evolved at the same time as our tasks have changed. Now we need to be more active on the field, and that's probably why we require different uniforms that would allow us, you know, to be more active and to walk around and so on, and do our job without having to wear a suit and a tie, which is sometimes uncomfortable when you are outside, you know, in the rain or, you know, in the sun and so on. And we have two more pictures. The one on the left bottom is the Paralympic Games in Beijing 2008. All the Olympic Games organizing committees, they have provided traditionally uniforms to our judges in different places. I guess that it was only at the Olympics in Rio that we wore our World Archery uniform. And you can see also at the bottom right, a picture of the judges at the Asian Games in 2018. So Asian Games or Pan American Games organizing committees, they also provide different uniforms. But I just wanted to show you that we have not been static at all. It's not just because we have new rules and all this, but we have also changed the way we dress to a more modern, like say, fashion. So the concept of what a good judge is has changed based on the new tasks, in addition to more exposure, and this has equaled a new concept of what an archery judge must be like. And I'll talk about it now. So the World Archery Judges Committee has worked very hard with 4 task forces in the last year to define a system of knowledge, skills, values, and attitudes. And we have found this system that is being now created. Now we're fine tuning. We're just proofreading what we wrote, and I'm sure it's going to be available probably in less than a month, and it's going to be published on the World Archery website. This system will allow our judges in general to prepare training courses, the syllabus, the goals. I mean, you need to know exactly what you're aiming at. And once you have defined this system, you're able to prepare your seminars, your courses from the lowest level, which can be a club judge or maybe a national judge, to the international judge seminars that we run around the world. Second thing is that this system will allow us to determine the types of practical sessions to implement at seminars. You can see here on the picture, in the picture that we have on the screen, International Judge Bob Pean from the United States. Bob and I ran a seminar for continental judges in Orlando, Florida last year. And this is a practical session. And Bob is showing our judges how you signal a tie. In this practical session, we measured the field, we checked that it was square. So there's a bunch of practical things that we do and we should do at our seminars. And this system will allow us to define what it is that we need to do in this sense. Number three, to design exams. So based on what we aim at, based on the knowledge our judges should have, and all of the others, let's say skills, values, and the like, we're going to be able to design exams, which may combine a written test, but also some practical tests during the seminars. And the fourth thing is that we're going to be able to fine-tune judge performance assessment forms. That is, about 2 years ago, Will Archery gave us a form to fill out to assess our judges at the end of each tournament. And we believe that it can be further improved. And this is, I mean, the fact that we have this system now will allow us to come up with, let's say, a better shaped or more accurate assessment form for our judges. Now, I'd like to focus now on this system of knowledge, skills, values, and attitudes. And I will, first of all, address what we understand by knowledge. Knowledge is the rules, you know, what is written, you know, in the rules book. Interpretations. These interpretations, for those who are not really into judging, I'd like to explain that an interpretation is a question that comes from a national federation. It may come from well, archery committee like ours, the judges committee, when we're not sure about a certain rule or a certain procedure. Then we send this interpretation request to Will Archery, and then it is, like say, deferred to the, let's say, relevant committee who can give an answer to it. Like, for example, if you're talking about a piece of equipment on a bow, then it is sent to the technical committee, and the technical committee comes up with an interpretation explaining the rule. These interpretations eventually become part of the rules because, you know, they give precision on a certain piece of equipment or something like that. But it is important that we judges know these interpretations, that we keep ourselves updated on the interpretations which are published on the website. Then we should know whenever possible what the intent of each rule is, because behind this rule that you can see in the book, there's a reasoning, there's a why we have this rule. It isn't always possible to really know it because maybe some of these rules were created even before we ever thought about becoming an international judge or a judge in general. But, you know, whenever possible, we should try to ask, you know, when we come to seminars, why do we have this rule? What is the intent of it? I mean, it is important to know the intent when we apply it so that we just don't go blindly and enforce something that we're not sure why we have there. And well, the judging structure and protocols, which is basically something that you can find in Appendix 4, which is part of our rules. So if you go to Book 1, and in Book 1, we have a number of appendixes, and one of them is Appendix 4, which is, I would say, the system of rules that are used to organize the work of the judges committee, judging seminars, how we appoint judges to events, to the Olympic Games, a number of things which are part of this Appendix 4, which is important for our judges to know. Because we outline there, among other things, the reaccreditation process. That is, how we can be reaccredited at every 4 years, what it is that we need to comply with, what is it that we have to attend, like conferences and the like. All of this is explained in Appendix 4. Now, the knowledge in this system is usually what you learn at seminars or what you learn on your own. You never get all the interpretations at a seminar. We sometimes have to study them on our own. I mean, we just go to the website, we read the website, we'll look for the interpretations, we'll look for the new bylaws and everything. That is important for us to do. So now, regarding skills, because I've talked about knowledge, and I'm not going to go deep into knowledge as such. The skills that our judges need to put into practice when they judge they are applied when they inspect the venue and venue equipment. This is a very important part of our job. We need to make sure all of our athletes are competing in the same conditions, like all the targets are set up at the same distance, that the centers of the targets are not one at 140, the other one at 129 or so on, so out of the rules. So there's a bunch of things that we need to consider when we inspect the field, beginning from the fact that the field has to be square. So all of this is part of the skills that we need to put into practice based on our knowledge of the rules. Number two, we inspect the archer's equipment. Very important. All the time we have new equipment coming out. And this is something that we cannot prevent because it's development, and we need to be updated regarding what new equipment has been produced or manufactured. And so we, the judges, need to understand, why this piece of equipment or this bow cannot be used in the bare bow division or so on. And this is one thing that we consider as a skill, that the judges must have. Number three is when we oversee shooting. So shooting and scoring, all this we do, and we've done this for centuries, I would say, since the beginning. We oversee, we check shooting as it is conducted, like we make sure that there are no high draws or side draws that may endanger, the public or other archers in competition. We oversee scoring so that there are no issues when the values of the arrows are entered in the scorecards and the like. So though we don't really correct scorecards anymore, as we did many years ago, but we need to make sure that the process is done according to the rules and that we don't have any issues. Now, when we make arrow calls and we handle ties, making arrow calls is now, I'll say, more crucial because I would say about 10 years ago, the rules were changed so that now it is only one judge making the call of an arrow, not three judges as we had many, many years ago, when a judge may say it was a 9, a second judge would come and say it was a 10, and then the third judge would decide whether it was a 9 or a 10. Now, the call you make is final. The call the judge makes is final. It is for this reason that we need to do our job accurately, and we need to practice, how to do this, looking from the right angle, from the correct angle all the time, so that we can have a better picture of whether the arrow is touching the line or not. Then we come to the matches. So though we need to know the rules regarding this, regarding timing, regarding order of shooting and the like, but we also need to know the procedures. And our committee has outlined a procedure for the finals for the judges who are officiating at the target. That is the judge as such, the scorer as well, everyone involved, like the archers, agents, and the like in the final. This is brand new, I'd say, new because it's been around for not longer than 25 years maybe, but still it is very stressful because we have television. We need to do it very quickly. We don't have more than 1 minute to do the whole procedure because television is waiting. So it is not as relaxed as it was many years ago. And then we have an etc., which includes everything else that we do during a competition. So these are the skills, basically. I like to talk now about values and attitudes, which I believe is one of the areas that would allow us to tell a good judge from somebody who's not as good as he or she should be yet. And when our committee and the task forces that were involved in the creation or in the definition of this system thought about values and attitudes, the first thing that came to our mind was being fair, because that's what a judge or any sports official should be. You need to be fair. And when we sort of like describe what we mean by being fair, some ideas come to our minds as well. Like, for example, not to be biased by the archer's nationality or personal attitude. Whenever I run a seminar or when I teach about archery judging, I always explain what happened to me at my first international tournament many years ago when a team from my country was also taking part in it. And I was called to a target where there was an archer from my country, which shouldn't happen anymore, but at that time it did happen. I'm talking about the early 1980s. And there was an arrow, and I gave this arrow the lower value. I didn't even know it was an arrow belonging to one of my countrymen. And then after I decided and I gave this arrow the lower value, the archer came to me and he said, you know what? I think you gave me the lower value because you were afraid that people would say you were giving me the higher value because you were from my country. And of course that wasn't the case, but that was the impression. That was the idea that came to the mind of the archer. And I said, well, why do I need to be judging, arrows belonging to people from my country? So why don't we just, do something about this so the judges should not become involved in this type of decision? And though at that time, there was a belief that international judges were international, that we didn't have like a nationality, that is not the case. We all have a passport, we all have feelings about our countries, and so it is better to avoid this conflict. So never allow, yourself to be, like say, used in a match or something that would involve people from your country. So if a judge is in this situation, I would say that the best thing to do is like he or she should talk to their chairman and say, why don't you replace me? Because I don't want to be involved in this. So archers' nationality or personal attitude, like we have archers who are very, like say, who behave well during the competition, who don't cause trouble. There are others who sometimes, like to cause a little bit of trouble, but this should not, like say, be a factor for us to consider when we decide on the value of an arrow or when we rule on something that, that may affect this archer negatively or positively. So this is important. Number two, we should not allow our archers from being disturbed, to be disturbed. This is important. And disturbance can come from other archers. Like, for instance, an archer who is moving in and out the shooting line all the time because he or she has their scope behind. And so the archer who is on the shooting line may be disturbed. And then this archer can come to you and say, or maybe the team captain or the team manager can say, this other archer is disturbing my archer. So you don't go, the judge does not go by hearsay. The judge should first of all look and see and, realize whether this is really happening and then take action. There's no penalty for this, but just a warning so that this archer is not disturbed. Or maybe if an archer and his coach are talking loudly from the shooting line and behind the waiting line, and this is disturbing other archers, we judges need to consider this and need to be looking for this and then, suggest that this shouldn't happen to the relevant team manager or something. So you should never stop, judges should never stop an archer when he or she is at full draw unless we have an emergency. Like you see that the clock, is blank for some reason, there was a power failure or something, and you see that I mean, the judge sees that there's an archer, aiming at the target, you should not, I mean, the judge should not stop the archer, because it is going to be more disturbing if you tell the archer, I mean, if the judge tells the archer not to continue shooting, because then he may miss the target. Why not? So we should respect our archers this way. Also, regarding how we change and when we change target faces, some archers do not like their target faces to be changed. And that is sometimes when you have a compound archer who's been shooting at the same target face, and now there's a black hole in the center of the target because he has hit this part of the target very often so far. And he's probably using this mark in the center of the target to aim better, to aim more accurately. So it is fine for the archer to do that, but we need to also respect the right of the other archers on the line. So this archer is taking an advantage over the other archers because he's aiming at this mark. So we should change that target face at that time, as well as, we should change target faces when we feel that the lines are not, really in a situation that would allow me as a judge to make an arrow call accurately. So these are the times in which you would like to change a face. And it is the judges who make the decision as to when a target face needs to be changed, and not because the archer wants us to do it or does not want us to do it. Okay? So also regarding values and attitudes we judges should have, I would say that one of the major, ideas is that we should be informed. We should keep ourselves informed, updated on everything that is published. And bylaws, which are rules, but these are rules that do not need to be passed by Congress, but just by the executive board of Will Archery. These bylaws are passed almost every 6 months. So it means that you're going to find a few more rules of this type on the website every 6 months. So judges need to be looking for this. The same as not only judges, also coaches, archers. We're going to be competing soon. So I believe that we all involved with archery we need to be checking for new rules and things on the website frequently. Also new interpretations, and I already explained what an interpretation is. These are released even more often because they don't need to be passed by the executive board, but they are just issued by the relevant committees of Will Archery, and they're published, I would say, every month, maybe every 15 days. It depends on how frequent also requests come from national federations. And judges should use their common sense and background knowledge to address new situations. This is interesting because not everything that you can find at a tournament can be found in the rules book. Otherwise, we would have, I don't know, 2,000 pages in the book, and that is not what we want. So if a situation arises that at a tournament, you see that an archer is using a piece of equipment that maybe can be questioned by other archers, I would say that the best thing to do would be just to have all the judges or some judges in the competition come together and see the piece of equipment and come to a conclusion as to whether it can be used or not based on your knowledge of previous rules. Like, well, this rule tells me that this is allowed. Why not allowing this? This does not contravene a rule or something. So this is one thing we should be able to do, and it should be part of our attitudes. Let's just say, no, you can't use it just because I've never seen it before. Let's analyze it, and then if we realize that this is something that does not contravene a current rule, why not? Okay, we would allow it, and we would suggest to this archer or to his national federation to submit an official interpretation request to the Will Archery Technical Committee. So let's continue. Okay, also part of the values and attitudes is the fact that we need to be respectful. I mean, we're there at the tournament not because we are the most important people there. We're not, for sure. So it is the archers. So we're there to serve the archers, to help the archers achieve their best results within the rules. Uh, One thing that I believe is very important is communication and how we judges communicate with the field crew and volunteers in a very polite way. These people are doing a great job at most tournaments. And as volunteers, they do not get paid for anything. So they just come because they love the sport. And a smile and a courteous, phrase from the judges would be just enough for them to be happy. And so we should do that whenever possible. And at the end of a competition, I would say this is one thing that I have done several times. It's just like I have gathered together all of the national judges and the field crew and everyone, and I have thanked them for the job they have done because they are very important at the tournament. We are not the most important people. Okay, we shouldn't be too friendly or mingle with teams too often. I mean, that's one thing that may happen. And it usually happens with newer judges who feel excited about the fact that they're officiating at a tournament where we have world champions and people who are very famous around the world. And so you feel like you need to be nice to these people, which is okay. I mean, being nice does not mean, telling jokes and, and going around the field just all the time with the teams. That shouldn't happen. This is not an attitude that we would favor, that we would, I would say, accept in our judges. Also, we need to be ready to explain to archers, coaches, and other officials questions on rules and equipment. It happens quite often that they come to you because they believe you're the person who knows all the rules, which is actually what should happen, and they ask you, can I do this? Or maybe younger archers, we have a mistake in the scorecard. How can we correct it? And you do not correct. The judges do not correct the scores, but they should explain to the archers involved how they can do it. And this is something that you can do to allow these archers not to make a mistake in future tournaments. So if they do it now, that's fine. Okay. Also, education is really important. I mean, we should be able to educate archers on rules and procedures, mainly, as I said before, at youth events. They come to you, and you should be ready to explain, patient as a teacher, like, this is what you do. The rule says this and that and the other, but in this situation, it shouldn't happen like this. I mean, we shouldn't apply this rule. It's another rule that we apply. So all of this will add to the judges, let's say, prestige as an official in the competition. Now, also regarding values and attitudes, an attitude I would say that we should always consider is that we should not make up rules which are not specified in the rules book. And sometimes when you are at a local tournament, national tournament perhaps, and you're faced with a situation that you have not seen described in the books, in the rules, you say, well, how am I going to handle this? And then the judge comes up with this rule that was never there, and it shouldn't happen. In chapter 15, book 3, we have all the cases in which penalties can be applied at a competition. We do have rules in our books that only say this should not be done, but there is no penalty. It's just a warning. And maybe once you have warned 3-4 times about the same thing, you can think about probably disqualifying because you believe it is a lack of respect coming from the archer or coach or someone. But nothing that is not in chapter 15 rules book 3 should be applied as disqualification or losing score of arrows or whatever. For example, when do we disqualify? We disqualify an archer for using illegal equipment. This may happen. Like I remember many years ago, I was at a World Field Championships in Cortina in 2000, and an archer was disqualified because he was a compound archer. He was using a bow, a 70-pound bow, and that was not allowed at that time. It isn't either now. So the archer was disqualified because of this. Also for score falsification. We're fortunate this doesn't happen at bigger events. Our archers are very, like say, very honest people. And that's one thing that our sport can be proud of, like our athletes are very honest. But it may happen perhaps with newer archers or local tournaments that an archer is overriding scores so that he can gain an advantage when the totals are added or something. This is considered to be unsportsmanlike, let's say, an unsportsmanlike attitude, and then it calls for disqualification. Also, for using unsafe technique, that is high draws or maybe side draws. I don't know if you understand what it is, but a high draw is what you can see in the picture, in the upper picture on the left. Like when the archer starts pulling the string, he's aiming very high. And if for some reason, mainly in compound archery, the archer lets go of the string, then we may have an accident. So for that reason, we need to be looking, for these, like say, cases along the line. Also, side draws, that is archers who start their execution of the shot, like, from the left, and they're disturbing the archer next to them, or maybe from the right. This is something that we need to be watching for to avoid an accident of different types. So for using unsafe technique, and it is the chairman of judges at the competition who makes the decision of disqualification. So it may have been noticed before. The situation may have been noticed before by another judge, but the final decision on disqualification is made by the judge, by the chairman of judges. Now, also for not announcing team composition changes. That's one thing that came into play when we started with the team round at events in which we had more than 3 archers being part of a team. And then if you needed to make a change in the members of a team who were shooting matches at that time, or some months ago, I would say some days ago, some weeks ago, we had a rule that said that this change in the team composition needed to be announced at least 1 hour before the start of the first match. Now we have changed this to 15 minutes, and that's basically because the current schedule of World Cups and so on sometimes include the mixed team round a few, I would say, minutes after the end of a qualification round. So the 1 hour rule was totally impractical. So we needed to make a change to adjust the rule to the reality. And now we have 15 minutes as maximum time before the start of a match to make the announcement. Now, also for not signing or totaling scorecards, this is a rule that has changed, that has been modified several times. The intention is not to disqualify archers, but if an archer does not sign after having been warned and reminded and so on, or if he hasn't totaled his portion of a scorecard, then he will be disqualified from competition. And for unsportsmanlike attitudes, there's a bunch of them described in the rules, which are things which are, say, common to many sports, like you yell at a judge, or maybe you hit somebody intentionally or so on. These are situations that may call for a disqualification. Now, when does the archer lose the score of arrows? One example can be when he shot an arrow out of time. He or the team has shot an arrow out of time. And when we do it as part of a team round, it is not an arrow that was shot by the archer who shot the arrow out of time that is taken away. It is the highest scoring arrow of the whole team. And then time penalties. This became a rule back in 1992 when we included the Olympic round of the Olympics in Barcelona in 1992. We never had this rule before. So the team event has a penalty, and this penalty is time, which is indicated by the judge when he raises his yellow card. So it means that the archer who crossed the line too early, or somebody who crossed the line with the arrow out of the quiver and the point was visible, So this archer has to return, and of course the team loses time. Okay. Also regarding values and attitudes, I like to refer to posture and the way, judges move around on the field and how they show themselves as part of the whole show. Uh, Judges should never show that they are tired, even if they are, because people might think, well, this judge is tired, maybe he's not capable, to do his job today. So I would not call this judge to make an arrow call in my target, because maybe he's not fit enough for today's session. So a judge should walk to and from the targets, not ever showing that they are tired. So the way you walk should show that you are in control, that you are okay. I mean, I'm talking in general about judges, okay? So judges should remain looking at the targets, waiting to be called. There's a judge here in this upper picture, Ting Ni Cheng from Chinese Taipei. This is a picture taken at the World Championships in 2013 in Belek. You see that the archers are scoring, and the judge is waiting. She's way behind, like about 5 meters behind the targets or in front of the targets, just waiting to see if there's a need for her to call and to go to a target and make a call. So you need to be watching for people who may be calling you. This is important. And once you're called, you need to go to your target as quickly as possible and never ask who the arrow belongs to. The judge will never ask who the arrow belongs to. The judge will call the value of an arrow regardless of who the arrow belongs to. Now, when you go to the target and you need to, to look at an arrow, you need to look for the tangent. This is explained at different seminars. So for athletes who are watching, and for coaches and so on, or for spectators who are watching, and maybe there's a transmission on television of a finals or something, and you see a judge that is looking, at the arrow from a distance, like he or she is afraid of the target or of the arrow. He or she's not doing the right thing. So we need to get as close to the target face as possible. As the judge at the bottom he's a judge, a youth judge from Slovenia. The judge is as close to the target as possible, but without touching the target face. The judge should not touch the target face. The judge should not touch the arrows when he's doing his job. If accidentally the judge touches the arrow, or if it touches the face, he will call the value of the arrow regardless. I mean, he would try to be as fair as possible in the circumstances, but nobody can claim, as has happened at some tournaments, that archers come and say, the judge touched the arrow or the judge touched the face, so I'm claiming the higher value. There's no rule saying that. So we judges know what we have to do, but if by accident we touch anything, we will still judge the value of the arrow as it lies on the target. Now, also very important is the last one here. Judges need to make decisions within their responsibilities without having to call their chairman to decide on routine matters. What can be a routine matter that maybe a judge or a new judge may think, well, I need to radio my chairman because this is happening here and I don't know how to solve the situation. Maybe I do know, but I don't want to take the responsibility. We had a situation many years ago at a World Championships, 50 meters compound, and a judge called his chairman on the radio saying that we have a situation here. We have 5 arrows on the target. There's an unmarked hole. And the archer says that he's sure he had a pass through, but I haven't been able to find the arrow. Nobody has found the arrow yet. And the hole in the target was a hole through which no arrow could have gone. So, but the archer still said, I have shot 6 arrows. I have a pass through. So the judge maybe he knew the rule, but he was probably not ready to make that decision. I believe that was his first big event. So he wasn't, ready to make a big decision as to causing an archer to lose a score. But he was not causing an archer to lose a score because there was no score as such. If there's no arrow, if you cannot find the arrow, there's no evidence that the arrow was ever shot. So what do? The arrow is a miss. So there's no score for that arrow. So this is one thing that we judges need to be able to decide on without having to call anyone else who may have maybe more experienced or something. Now, it may also happen that the chairman is around, and if you can just commend to him, well, this happened there, here and there, or maybe the archer is not happy about it. The archer always has the right through his team captain or team manager to appeal the decision made by a judge. So if it goes to jury, jury will decide what to do, but I'm sure jury will know that there's no arrow, there's no evidence. Even if you have like 10 unmarked holes on the target, it doesn't mean that the arrow was shot. So you don't really take that into consideration. So another, let's say, area in which I believe we judges need to work on regarding values and attitudes is being focused. And being focused means not just our minds, but also our eyes. I don't know, well, there's a picture here, the picture with the lady judge up, the upper picture on the right. You can see international judge Sabrina Steffens from Germany. This picture was taken at the Youth Olympic Games in 2010 in Singapore. This is a mixed team round. You may say, well, but why do we have a mixed team round with people from two different countries, Australia and Slovenia? Well, at the Youth Olympic Games in 2010, 2014, and 2018, mixed teams were formed by archers from two different countries. This will not happen in 2026 now, but this is what happened. So the judge is, if you look at her eyes, she's watching closely, she's watching from her position the 1 meter line. And the 1 meter line is a line that is laid on the field, just 1 meter behind the shooting line. And the archer who's waiting cannot cross this line before the other archer has come out of the 1 meter area yet. So the judge is just watching to make sure there's no violation. So that's what we call keeping our eyes. Of course, the eyes will go where the mind tells them to go. So in this case, the eyes of the judge were just focused on where they had to be. You can see here the picture next to it. This was the rehearsals of the World Championships in Netherlands in 2019. Here we have the director of shooting. He is watching the competition on the screen because there were no possibilities for the director of shooting to watch the 1 meter line from where he was. So a camera was positioned there to film the 1 meter line, and then the director of shooting would look at it from where he was. This is Andrea Bartot from Italy, who was the director of shooting at the World Championships. This is a job that does call for a lot of concentration, the job of the director of shooting. I don't think many people who are great judges can do this job because it calls for patience, for this, I would say, this personality trait that would allow you to be sitting somewhere for so many hours, pushing buttons and focused on the line and on everything. So my congratulations to all of those who do this job. Okay, now, also when an archer is on the line and he's the last archer and there are 5 seconds left and so on, the judge assigned to this portion of the field needs to be looking, is to be watching to make sure that the arrow is not shot out of time. Some judges have misunderstood this and they believe they need to be closer to the archer, like intimidating the archer. This is not the case. This is a case, if you do that, if a judge does that, he's going to be disturbing the archer, and that is not what we want. So the fact that you stand up so that you can see better does not mean that you have to get closer to the archer, does not mean that the judge needs to be intimidating the archer while he's on the shooting line. Also, and these, the other two have to do with when a judge can stop a match, okay? So for example, in number 3, we have watch the clocks at the start of a shoot off and stop the match if the clock is wrong. So it may happen that since the regular ends were shot using 2 minutes. Now, when you have to come to a shoot off, you need to change that to 40 seconds. It may happen that we have a situation in which the clocks are wrongly set. So the judge needs to be looking at the clocks when they start counting down. So if a judge realizes that the clock is counting down from the wrong initial time, he has the power, he has the authority to stop the match. This is going to prevent a bigger problem. So this is important, that judges need to know that in this situation, they have all the authority to stop a match to avoid a problem. And of course, when we see that the target face is blowing or something, then we should also stop the match, not just the target. If we have two archers shooting at two different targets in a match, we need to stop the whole match. I remember many years ago, I was at a tournament in Mexico, and there was a very young judge, and he had learned at the seminars that when you have we have a match can never be stopped. That's what he thought. So you don't stop a match when we have an equipment failure. We don't stop a match when we have a pass-through. And he thought that this applied to every situation. So I remember that I was standing, I would say about 5 minutes behind him when he was doing his job on the shooting line. And then all of a sudden, one of the two target faces blew over, and then it was impossible for the archer to aim at the center. So the judge told the archers to go on. And that was, of course, wrong. And I was close to him and I said, no, you stop the match now, because then, how is this archer going to aim? There's no center for him to aim at. Okay, so let's see. Other values and attitudes that I would like to talk about is being proactive. I mean, a judge should need to foresee situations that call for the application of a combination of more than one rule, and they need to be ready to apply this. Some areas in which you can find this combination of rules being needed is when you're shooting indoors, and indoor scoring has special rules because you have 3 spots, and you can have only one arrow, a shot at each of the 3 spots. So if more than one arrow is shot at one of the spots, or when you come to the target, you see 2 arrows on one of the 3 spots, then the higher value of those 2 becomes a miss, but still it is a value. Now, if in addition to having 2 arrows on one spot, you have a total of 4 arrows, then you have 2 violations. And then if you also have a situation of an arrow being shot out of time, you have 3 violations. And then we judges need to know the order in which the 3 violations are going to be addressed. I mean, what do we do first? Do we first of all consider the arrow shot out of time, or is it that we consider first of all the 4 arrows in total, or is it that we first of all take care of the 2 arrows being shot that were shot at one single spot? So this order in which we apply the rules is something that we judges need to foresee and practice in our minds. So if this happens, I'm going to do this first, and then I'm going to do this other thing first, and so on. Sometimes when we deal with this at a seminar, we don't have the target as such with the arrows. We just talk about it. So the situation in which the judge learned about this rule and its application does not really happen the same way when you are at a competition. So we need to adapt, what happens at the competition to the way we structure our seminars, so that the judges are faced with the situation just as they would be at a specific competition. Also regarding compound team scoring. Recurve team scoring is easy because you have only one target face and 6 arrows are shot at the same target face. When we do compound, we have 2 target faces, 3 arrows per target face. We need to know what may happen or what we should do when we have 4 arrows on the left and 2 on the right. How do we apply the rule here? So when we have 4, regardless of who they belong to, then we would consider the highest value as a miss, and we still have that as a value. So we have 6, but if we have 4 on the left, 3 on the right, and one of them shot out of time, then we have a similar situation to what I described when I talked about indoor scoring. So all of this needs to be reviewed, and thought over by the judge constantly when you approach a specific part of a competition. So what am I going to do if this happens? Now, usually, commission chairmen at different tournaments, they go over the procedures at the beginning of the day. But still, after the meeting with all the judges has finished, we judges need to individually think about what we do, just like do some imagery, and think about, the process and how we would approach that. Now, another thing is, and this is an example that happened to me when I was a judge at the World Championships in Belek in 2013 in Turkey, and that is when we are the shooting line judge at a finals match. There was a match at the World Championships. I think it was a bronze medal match, and there were two teams involved. And I knew as a judge that for some reason, when the clock came to 0, it would not sound. So there was no buzz at the end of the 2 minutes. But I needed to make the coaches aware of this. And so I talked to the coaches. So I foresaw a possible, situation that would be difficult to handle if we had a situation of an arrow being shot out of time because the team didn't know that the clock would not make a sound. So I talked with the two coaches and I told them, this is going to happen. So make sure your archers know how much time is left. So my suggestion is that you make your archers aware of the time left, because if the clock comes to 0 and an arrow is shot out of time, I would have to deduct the highest scoring arrow. So become involved. And this worked very well. So we need to be foreseeing situations based on what we know about the competition and how it is being run at a certain tournament. So when I was preparing for this, like say, summit, I thought that the information I wanted to give you would not just be what I thought or what our committee would think about a certain thing. And so I sent out a survey to archers, coaches, and judges in different parts of the world. And the question was only one: what makes a good judge? And a number of things came, like a number of ideas and things that I had not considered, and they made a lot of sense. One of the, let's say, of the messages that I received said that the judge should have what I call situational awareness. And this came from a judge in the United States. And it was very interesting. So, and he explained what it was. And so the idea is that the judge should know everything that is going out, that is going on in a competition. Like, for example, in a shoot-off, there's a possibility we may have a shoot-off. We judges need to be looking for where we're going to have the shoot-offs, how many targets. Let's get the field crew ready with new target faces before we even start, so that we don't delay the competition because of this. How many archers are going to qualify? Once we have the information about the ties for position 104, how many archers are going to qualify? For example, at the World Championships in 2019, we had shoot-offs that involved 5-6 archers. So we judges needed to know how many would qualify, how many would be out after the shoot-off, so that we would need to consider, okay, if we have 2 archers who shot a 10 and the others shot a 9, and we only needed 2 archers, then we don't need to go on. But if we only have 1 position available and we have the same result, like 2 10s in recurve, and then we have a lot of 9s. So all the 9s are going to be already out, but we need to have a second shoot off because we have 2 archers with a 10 in recurve. So all this has to be clear, and it only happens when you have like what we call, or what this judge called, situational awareness of everything that happens on the field. Also, communication is important. The picture, the upper picture here is a meeting of all the team managers. This is, I think, at the World Championships in Belek. The chairman of judges, Graham Potts from Great Britain, is talking to the team managers. He's providing information, probably because, you know, we meet with the team managers for different reasons, but one of the reasons may be if we have a change in schedule for some reason. So we need everyone to be informed. But also, at this particular competition, we needed to change the format of the team round or compound because it was very windy, extremely windy. And we did not want archers to win or teams to win their matches just by chance. And when you have two target faces and it's so windy, your arrows can go anywhere. So maybe you're aiming at the left target and then your arrow lands in a 10 in the right target. So, you know, good luck. So the decision was made to extend the time from 2 to 4 minutes and also to have only one target face in the middle. So this was communicated to the team managers by means of the World Archery Secretary General, Mr. Tom Dillon, and the chairman of judges. So this is one example of how communication has to flow. Now, confidence and humility. Okay, these are really values. You need to be confident in what you do, and confidence comes in the first place from experience, but also from the fact that you have studied, that you have become. I mean, the judges have studied, they have become. I mean, they have prepared for this competition. We have a picture here. It's a judge from Slovenia, Irena Rosa, and Irena has spotted here arrows that were left on the target. So the archers went back to the shooting line, and maybe he was so happy because of the score he shot. And then the judge, who had situational awareness of what was going on the field, she spotted that, and she called the archer back so that he would come and pull the arrows out and then return. So this is another thing that we would probably include within having situational awareness. So something else regarding our judges in general is that we need to be fit and resilient. So look at this judge, Alison from Australia, Alison Hageman from Australia. She's in the rain. It's raining. This was in last year at the World Championships in the Netherlands. And we have to continue working. We have to work in the rain, in the sun, and we'll later talk about 3D and field. Also, we have long events. If a judge is officiating at an indoor tournament like Vegas or similar, we start working very early in the morning and we end up finishing at about 10 in the evening, sometimes later. So the days are long, and when you have enough judges, the chairman of judges should be able to maybe assign shifts so that the same judge doesn't need to work the whole day. So this one thing that can be done to avoid, having judges who are tired and who cannot focus, which is possible because we're all human. Now, a judge should be inspirational. And this also came from judges in the United States, like you should have, the ideal judge, the good judge, and that is what we're talking about, is someone who inspires other judges to go on, to learn, and so on, our role models as such. And we need to be supportive and willing to cooperate with our other judges, with field crew and local organizing committee. This, though we're not organizing the competition, though we're not there to set up the field, if there's a request for help, we will help. For sure we will. We don't believe that this is something that would make us lose face, in front of anybody if we set up target faces or if we come to the field and help moving faces, targets and so on, if necessary. So this is really important for me to mention here. Okay, so at field and 3D events, our judges have to be even more fit because the conditions of these events are different. So we don't have a flat surface to walk on. At field and 3D events, you may need to walk uphill and downhill, and this may be sometimes dangerous. And if it rains, of course, it's going to be worse. So we're going to have slippery surfaces. We need to make sure that we walk safely and so on. So this is one thing to consider when we appoint judges for this type of event. Also, the sessions are long, as I said before, about indoor. In the case of field, it is the same. And when we are called to make an arrow call, which doesn't happen as often as it happens at target tournaments, but we still have to do it sometimes. The faces are sometimes at the level of the ground. So we need to sometimes even, lie on the ground to judge, to make an arrow call. So this call and all of these conditions call for judges who are fit. So also coming from the survey, we had some input indicating that a judge should be able to understand and also, why not, explain to archers, coaches, and other people around the field the competition schedule. Judges need to know what time the matches will start, and if you're doing matches using simultaneous shooting or maybe alternation and all that, this should be common. This should be the knowledge that a judge should have. The whole judges commission should have the same knowledge about this. Also regarding scorecards, different tournaments, you may end up having different types of scorecards. We don't use the same scorecards at all events. So when the archers start scoring, maybe when they're scoring the same at the first end, they would find out that the scorecard is not what they're used to. So they would usually turn around and call the judge, and they will ask, where do I write my tenths, my X's, or where do I, take here to say that I won the match or I lost. So all this should be information that we judges should have, so that we do not become, aware, or we do not become familiar with this scorecard just when we're called by the archers. The same happens with the brackets, like matches, the who am I paired with in the next match and all that. We should be able to do that. We should be able to explain to the archers, how the competition will move on later. Judges are people who need to love what they do, the same as other people, of course. But if you don't like what you do not become a judge. This is just that simple. Also, we judges need to be able to listen to and act upon criticism. That is, if a chairman comes and tells a judge, you need to work in this, or what you did this time was not right, but then we need to understand that this is not just because they don't like us. It is because the chairman of judges has a responsibility to make everything possible for his judges, or to do everything possible for his judges to do the best job, because the competition needs to be run according to the rules. So listen to your chairman. Judges should listen to their chairman and also act upon their criticism. And we need to be problem solvers, not just people that come and say, we have this situation, how are you going to solve it? We need to come with a solution when we find that there's an issue on the field. Now, another area in which about which we received input on from the survey was regarding stress. The situation now is not the same as it was some years ago. We're under a lot of exposure now. We have a lot of exposure to television, to spectators, in the stands and all that. So this is one thing that we need to handle. And the best way to handle stress is by getting prepared to the competition. You need to read rules. We need to review the procedures and all that before you come to a tournament, so that you're not faced with a situation that you're not familiar with or that you did not expect. Now, regarding accurate and sharp decisions, if you take a look at the bottom picture, we have a judge here who's in front of a target, and there are two faces. I'd like to think that this is a shoot-off, an individual shoot-off, 70 meters, and the judge is taking a look at the two arrows, but he is not ready to measure. And the reason why he's not getting ready to measure is because he does not need to. It is evident that one arrow is closer to the center than the other. It would be silly to see a judge measuring here when everyone, everywhere in the world who's watching on television knows who has won the match. So this is important that we need to be accurate, but accuracy starts from, from the moment in which we decide whether we need to measure or not. And the last one here is about contributing to the smooth conduction of the tournament and not causing undue delays. The picture, the upper picture on the left, though I know for sure this was not happening, but it is a picture that sort of describes or portrays, the situation that is being explained at the end here, is that sometimes after scoring has finished and all the archers are walking back to the targets, you see one or two judges walking along the target line, just looking for unmarked holes. This we don't need to do. Unmarked holes or marking holes is the responsibility of the archers, not of the judges. So judges do not need to do this, and all they're doing is delaying the competition unduly. Okay. Now, and the last input we got from the survey has to do with the difference between enforcing and applying. The input that we got was that for some people, coaches and archers and even judges, when we're told to enforce, it means that we will do it blindly. The rule says this, and I have to do what the rule says. Applying is, I would say, a little bit different. When you apply, you need to consider whether this rule is the one that suits this specific situation, and whether I would apply it just as it is written. It is not that we are allowed to make up rules, but we are allowed to understand if this is a rule that applies in this case, or if it is not. And I have 4 examples. In the first place, an arrow shot after the beep. We know that when the beep sounds, it's the end of the end or of the set or whatever. And but if there was a mistake by the director of shooting or maybe the equipment in stopping the clock, maybe the archer did not use the 2 minutes and he was aiming at the target when there were 20 seconds left, and for some reason the clock went to 0, or maybe it didn't, but it just, the archer heard a sound. So, oh my God, my time is over, and he didn't shoot the arrow. So are we allowing time for this archer to shoot this arrow? Yes, we will. And the archer is going to get 40 seconds. And even if the arrow was shot out of the beep, if it was within the 2 minutes, we would allow it as well. Now, there's a rule that says that when there's a discrepancy between the sound and the let's say, and the visual signal, the sound signal will prevail. That is okay when we have like 1 second, maybe 1.5 seconds, because the 2 systems are not synchronized. But when we have a mistake made by the DOS or by the equipment itself, causing the buzz to come out, to come off, maybe 20 seconds before, this rule does not apply. Second case is when archers did not sign the scorecards. We know that this may call for disqualification unless it is spotted before and corrected. But we're thinking about a situation in which the archers showed the scorecards to the judge, asking the judge if the scorecards were okay, if they were complete, and so on. And the judge said, yes, no problem. The judge collects the scorecards, and the archers didn't sign. So in this case, we need to be more flexible. We would not apply a disqualification immediately because the circumstances are not the same. In the third case, we have alternation. The clock has stopped. There's a match with alternation, and there's an archer at full draw aiming at the target when the clock stopped. There's no sound signal. So the clock just went to 0 or stopped for some reason, and the judge should not stop the archer. Even if the archer shoots his arrow after this time came to 0 unduly, then you would allow the arrow. Because if you stop the archer, you're going to be causing more trouble. And the last one, this is real, this happened. An archer shoots one of his 6 arrows with a different fletching color combination. Fletching means a combination of everything, all the colors you use, like in the, the arrows that you can see on the screen. And some people may say, well, the rules say that all the arrows need to have the same fletching combination in terms of color. So if an archer has one arrow that is not meeting, this requirement, then why not causing this archer to lose the highest scoring arrow? That's nowhere in the rules. So what is the intent of Rule 11.171, which is the one covering this situation? The intent is that we should have the same fletching combination, because this will allow judges and archers and whoever to spot arrows somewhere on the field if we find an arrow. So it is important that we have the same combination. Also, it helps other archers to spot their arrows when they're shooting and they're using their binoculars to identify arrows on the target. So these are reasons why we would probably have this rule, but there's no penalty. If you go to chapter 15 in book 3, you will not have a penalty for this. So this is what I would say is, are 4 examples of the difference between enforcing and applying. Well, first of all, I'd like to thank you for having, been with us today. The intention of this presentation was to share with people involved with archery in different capacities, like archers, coaches, team officials, fellow judges, organizers, and everyone else, to inform you of, let's say, or to let you know about what judging means, some of the things that we do and what we consider, and how we believe a good judge should be. So this has been exactly what we wanted to do. And again, thank you very much for your attention. And I hope you can profit from the information that we have shared with you today. Thank you very much.